Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff, and joining me at this moment is my co-host, my co-laborer in the vineyard, and expert investment advisor, Terrence Hollisworth. Terry, good evening. How are you this evening?
Good evening. How are you? It is
I'm doing good. I'm doing
NCAA
good.
wrestling time, so I'm a little bit
Yes, sir.
upset not being down in Kansas City, but my next couple of days is going to be about watching matches and making predictions.
The kid from Penn State who had to take an injury default in the Big Ten. Is he ranked first or ninth? I saw different things.
Well, he
Kariuki
was
is his name.
Carter Sharati.
Okay.
He's a three-time national champ, going for his fourth. He was ranked number one and undefeated all season. Got injured and defaulted out of the Big Ten tournament, and somehow they see the ninth, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but that is what the NAACP does. I mean, the NCAA does.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's gonna be a good quarterfinal match because I think he's gonna go against the kid from Iowa State, I believe. Carr. I think they're lined up to go. Is it?
Are they
Is
really?
it?
I thought he had Virginia Tech, and the guy from Virginia Tech is the number one seed and things like that. But
Oh,
I
is he?
mean,
Oh no, I
yeah,
think you're right. Virginia Tech. Yeah, that Iowa State. He's in the bracket with Missouri, the kid from Iowa State, Carr, I believe.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna be it was gonna be a tough match. But you got the NCAA wrestling championships going on. You got the NCAA basketball tournament going on right now. Illinois pulled out a W today, so they won it convincingly. For those of you who don't know, Terrence Shannon, third team All American,
Yeah,
is the real deal. The real deal. He's
I,
already
I
be
I heard
yeah.
about him, so we'll see, right?
Yeah, he tore it up in the Big Ten tournament, and he scored 30 something today against Morehead State. But their next game is going to be against Duquesne, and they're in Iowa, right? Isn't Duquesne University in Iowa?
I don't
I
think
believe they're in
so.
Iowa, or is that Drake I'm thinking of?
That's Drake.
Those of you who are Duquesne alumni or know about Duquesne University, let us know where it is. It sounds like Iowa to me, and I could be wrong. But look, man, there's a lot going on in the world of politics, economics, and finance investments as it relates to our everyday livelihood. And
Yes.
one of the news that came out just today was in Prince George County here in Maryland. Um, there is a proposal to pass a bill for reparations for slaves at a location called the Bel Air Mansion in Bowie, Maryland. That's actually a horse farm that depended on generations of slave labor from 1745 until the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. So 21 slaves were sold along the building and the grounds. Of course, the grounds still exists today. But this reparations bill, which has passed the first stage, has been turned down a couple times since 2020. But they believe they're confident that it will pass this time. And that means that there may be some cash value to this. Some of those descendants of those slaves will get like college tuition, free college tuition, and just a couple other things that they're trying to work out right now. So
So that's one of the biggest issues that I have with the reparations thing, and maybe this time around with Biden, if he wins a second term, that we can actually deal with HR 40, which is
mhm.
you know the bill to study reparations, and he ran on not on reparations, but marijuana is, of course, a black platform.
Yeah.
And people want to always say, um, we're going to pay reparations in the form of college tuition. And I'm 100% against that.
Mhm.
What do you think?
I have mixed feelings about that because certainly everyone who graduates from high school will not go to college. They can go to trade school, and some, go right to the workforce. Some take a gap year. So there's different things. So on one hand, it's not a bad thing. On the other hand, I see your point. You talk about the billions and billions of dollars of free labor that took place during slavery, and how the slave owners have not been held accountable to the cash, basically,
Yeah.
and stock. Railroad industry, agriculture being really big, shipping industry. They created, you know, thousands of millionaires, particularly in the states like Mississippi and Alabama and Arkansas and things like that. So they should pay. They should pay. And that's why they said in this reparation bill, it would include cash and not just college tuition. Like Georgetown, I believe they have free college tuition to the descendants of slaves who helped build Georgetown University and the White House. So cash is always king, and they should reward those, especially those 21 slaves, descendants of those who suffered and struggled during that time period.
So this is the last thing I'm going to say before I get out of the way, so we can talk with Trustee Jones. But um, we just had an election yesterday in Illinois. Voter turnout was 15.4%, I believe, and we got to do better, right? If we expect to get anything that's going to have value to our families, because as you see what's happening all over the country, Alabama yesterday, they outlawed DEI, can't put any money towards diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right.
Iowa did that last year. I think Florida did it not that long ago. And so they're attacking anything that is associated with Black people to try and
Mm-hmm.
extract wealth from us and keep us from getting it. The only way that we're going to make a difference if we go out and vote, if we go out and vote people in that really have our best interests at heart. And like we were talking about in the pre-show, for everyone that says it doesn't matter, it was one vote that was the difference between on the city council ballot for Maywood. One vote.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
like you said, every vote counts. If you don't vote, if you choose not to vote, that's a vote for the opponent. And we see what's going on locally. Virginia's was last week, Illinois and other states, on Tuesday. Um, but you can't complain if you don't vote. I mean, I understand you may not like the candidates locally or statewide, or when general election come up on November 5th, the presidential election, but you have to vote. If for nothing else, many people died for us to have the right to vote,
absolutely.
and for us to be so selfish as a people, realizing the hell that our forefathers and foremothers went through, um, just to earn the right to vote. To me, that's a sin in itself. So it's not out of guilt, but it's out of pride that you should get your tail out there and vote. And with vote,
Yeah.
you have power to change the law, change the policy. As you mentioned that example, that every vote makes a difference. You just don't know what happened. And I don't want another type of situation, Terry, in a November election where you remember when Bush won because of his brother in Florida. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It came down to that. And that was because had maybe 2% more African Americans went out to vote, that would have made the difference. And it would have been no question about it. So, it changes on every level. Nationally, locally, regionally, statewide. I see you, Jerry Horn. I see your comment. I think every vote counts. If you go out there and vote locally, it makes a difference locally as well as nationally. I mean, do I want Trump to be out there in office again? Nationally, because his policies do not match up with working class and so-called middle income and low income class citizens. It just doesn't. Like, Trump is not going to give us a free tuition. He's not going to forgive the student loan debt like President Biden is doing right now. He's not going to tax the wealthy like President Trump would not do. He will not decrease the tax rate for corporate wealthy, for the corporate rate rather, from 35% to 21% like Trump did. So nationally it does, make a difference, especially economically, in my humble opinion.
No, absolutely. So, listen, I am gonna stop talking because these are things that I'm working on every day,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And hopefully we can get more people involved. But we certainly want to hear from Trustee Jones. One of the things that I talked about is, Maywood is changing, right? The
Indeed.
demographics are changing.
Indeed.
The world is changing, and we need to, hopefully get some insight and some perspective on this with Trustee Jones and what's happening and what's happening now, but what are they planning for?
Those of you who are in Maywood or from Maywood, connected to Maywood directly or indirectly, I saw a couple of you put comments out there in our podcast. Welcome, Miss Loretta, Jeremy again, and those others who are out there. Please put your comments in there. Whether we agree or not, we never agree to this. I mean, we can agree to disagree, but we will never be disagreeable. So we love your comments. And you have a question for Trustee Jones, please put it out there because I'm looking at the comments. Terry is as well. So, and Brother Sykes, good to see you, brother, man. Welcome. So we have a platform and a space where we're open and we value your opinion. And even if you're an expert in the field, we value your input. So thank you very much.
All
And
right.
without
See you
further
guys
ado,
later.
yes, sir. I'd like to bring on Trustee Jones. He is no stranger to the podcast. He is a trustee in the village of Maywood. He is making moves and he is doing his best to represent the village of Maywood, the community in the village of Maywood. And he's coming on tonight to talk about some great things that's going on in the village. And without further ado, I'd like to bring on Trustee Miguel Jones. Trustee Jones, good evening, sir.
Dr. Ratliff, how's it going? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We always welcome you, and we're always appreciative of you taking time from your busy schedule to talk about some great things that's happening in Maywood, some movements. And for those who aren't familiar with what's going on in the village of Maywood at the leadership level, let's start off with that. What's going on at the leadership level?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Well, just in the community and in general, we're just, coming off a, primary election, so, a lot of people, been looking to see, what's going to happen to, what's going to happen with that. But, at the local level in Maywood, we are, we just passed our budget and there's a lot of exciting things going on. And community engagement. And so, we're really excited to, really put a lot of resources in making sure that our youth have things to do, that our community have things to do. If you're looking to start a business in the village, that we have resources available. Our budget also, calls for, just, investment in our assets. And a lot of areas that, I can, dive into, block clubs and those type of things. But, one of the things that I want to encourage, everyone to get involved in is just making sure that people are engaged. I think there's a lot of resources in community engagement because our communities are not engaged. Yesterday we saw a low voter turnout, and it's hard to get your demands across as a community if we aren't showing up at the ballot box, because how it works is especially for those federal dollars, they're looking out for communities that are going to ultimately hold them accountable. And so if our voter turnout is low, then sometimes we're in last place. So lots of exciting things, but we have to be engaged. And so, I would encourage the community to, attend the board meetings, ask questions, call your trustees and get involved.
I love how you say that. And first of all, congratulations on the budget going forward. I'm sure that everyone on the board has the residents' best interests at heart. And I'm sure you saw the comments, Trustee Jones, from a couple those who are connected. Aaron Janoski, who is a swimmer at Proviso East at Triton College, and also Mr. Jeremy Horn. A couple others would like to inquire about the Fred Hampton. We called it the Fred Hampton Pool back in the day, which is now Fred Hampton Aquatic Center. So is there anything in a line item on the budget to deal with that matter?
So there is. So let me speak about. There's like two approaches that we're dealing with, and I'll let you know which one that I support, and then I'll let you know about the two that are on the table. So the mayor has spoken about this Fifth Avenue redevelop initiative, where within this campus concept that we're going to redevelop the police station, the Fred Hampton Pool, that whole municipal area, the Masonic Temple, 200 buildings, all going to be incorporated into this, project that would, we would utilize bonds and, potentially tap into TIFs in order to fund this. And so that is something that the board may or may not be weighing, but that's kind of long term in terms of options. In the short term, and what I've been championing is that, one, we need to do an official study. The last that I heard, there was two kind of options practically. One was, so the issue is that there's foundational, leaks, within the foundation, cracks within the concrete. And so it can't hold water. And so, we can either repair the pool, which has been quoted, somewhere in about the $800,000 or $900,000 range, or some people think we just need to redo it, which is, upwards of $1 million, maybe even close to $2 million. And so I like to go with the latter. I think there's opportunities where we can fund the pool. The village we are tied to I don't know if the community knows this, but we are tied to the Bally's casino in Chicago. And so we get 10% of the net profit that comes from that casino. And so it's currently in a temporary space in Chicago. Once that's fully built, we're estimating to get about $1 to $2 million a year from that casino and revenue. And I think that could easily fund a brand new a brand new pool. But we have to make it a priority. And I think from what I've heard from the mayor's approach, that's down the line. It also includes bonds. And I'm not sure if the community's interested in, a community that's already highly taxed going the bond route. Right. So I think what we should do is utilize those funds that we're going to get from the casino to start to fund that, where we can get the engineering and architectural drawings this summer, start construction. And by, as early as I would say next summer, we could have that up and running. I think that's probably the most practical approach.
Lord willing, that would be great. And I know the community would be ecstatic, elated, once that pool reopens, the aquatic center opens. Without spending too much more time, Trustee Jones, will the budget be posted publicly for the community to view, or is it already on the website?
Yeah, so we had I chair the finance committee, and so we had department heads come and present the budget. It's actually going to be presented at the Maywood Village meeting on April 2nd. And so that's where I would encourage the community to come out and listen to what is going to be funded this year, because ultimately the budget reflects our priorities for the year. And there's a lot of decisions that we have to make, in particular, how to spend our ARPA resources, which is going to be a big conversation. The village received $3.1 million. And so there's going to be some allocation decisions made within this budget and going forward. Also, there's going to be some decisions in terms of, where to put resources within our departments. And we need to make sure, people mention the pool. That's where we start to make those decisions. And it's important that, we can talk about plans and grants and so forth, but this budget is where we can actually make some financial commitments into some of these spaces. So I would encourage the community to come out and, don't take that lightly. The village responds to the residents that come out and voice their opinions. And, to be honest, there's usually about a handful of residents that come out, and those are the ones that get heard. And, a lot of times those are the ones that, ideas get pushed forward. That would be my encouragement to the residents.
So they come to the meetings, they're able to make public comments regarding their interests or, what's important to them. Is that correct?
Yeah, so absolutely. So what happens is that we pass a budget, right? And then what happens is that we execute on that budget. But, whether we're able to make that change or not, you can always amend things. You can always put things on people's minds for them to consider. And then later on down the line, we can, what we call in finance, adjust our forecast, adjust our plan to what the desires of the community are, and then what other resources that we get from a grants perspective. There's also been conversations around TIFs, that I can kind of go in as well. But ultimately, we're looking to curate the community that our community wants and deserves, and so they deserve to be at the table. We have a lot of experts as well in the community that live here or that are in this region that genuinely care about the town, and we can lean on them. We can lean on the stakeholders and say, okay, here's where we want to utilize our resources.
Absolutely. Is it more advantageous economically, Trustee Jones, to lean towards TIFs as opposed to bonds as far as taxpayers and that kind of thing?
You know what? I don't know if there is a great answer to that, because at the end of the day, they're all financing tools, right? That you ultimately you're able to utilize funds now that you're going to pay later. So it's almost like asking, are credit cards good? Well, it depends, right, on your plan of action, your cash flow that you're going to be expecting to come in with, in terms of paying some of those things off. But there's two things that are fundamentally different about bonds and TIFs. And so a TIF, a tax incremental financing, essentially what that is that at a certain point in time when a TIF is established, the village gets to take advantage of the growth of the properties within that area, but the other governing bodies stay at a certain ceiling. And so we're able to utilize those resources for infrastructure improvements. Bonds are, essentially, you're taking out municipal, securities, and, you're able to leverage those, resources, but you have to pay those bonds back with interest. And so there are two different mechanisms. I will say, generally speaking, those mechanisms, they can be useful, but you can't rely on those, just like you can't rely on credit cards, right? Like at the end of the day, you have to have a sustainable economic base. You have to have businesses. You have to have homeowners that are contributing to the tax base. You have to be able to collect on the tax base. Maywood has, we levy taxes every year, and we maybe only receive about 70% of that. And so that means 30% of the taxes that we levy, we're not collecting because it's vacant properties or the owners we haven't gotten in contact with them. So it's a complex scenario, but I think the answer to your question is that the community deserves at least to have a plan. And kind of what you would expect is the same way when you're investing in a property. Is a mortgage bad or good? It can be. You need to have a plan, right, in place. And so I think if we're going to be leveraging debt, we need to have a plan, and we need to be able to spell it out so the community in layman's terms can understand it. And I'm here to help the community out with that.
You said 30% of potential revenue is missing because of vacant property? Is that what you said as far as tax revenue?
So when we levy property taxes, so when we do our property tax levy and we say, hey, we, in order to fund the entire community, we need $32 million. And, some people have that conversation about, are we going to increase the levy or decrease the levy or whatever? So if you don't increase the levy, that means you're collecting the same amount of money from the prior year. What happens is, even though we're levying that money, we don't always collect it, right? Because that depends on if people are paying their property tax bills, and that doesn't always happen. And so, and don't quote me on 30%. There's a significant amount of tax dollars that the village does not actually see, although we levy it. And so, those type of things we can help advocate for. It's not a local issue; it's more of a county issue. But those are things that we can make headway. Because even if we improve that by 5% or 10%. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars that we could utilize for things like the pool. And so those are creative ways that, we can, collect our resources or, partner with different government agencies to help benefit the town that aren't necessarily obvious, right? Like those are nuanced things, and you got to work with your state and county officials to get movement on that.
Do you think, thanks for being, transparent with your response. Appreciate it. My question is, do you think that, increase as far as a levy at any percent, any rate, will cause more of a strain to residents who are already paying like property taxes and things like that to repair the pool? Or getting back to your point that you mentioned a few minutes ago about tips or bonds or whatever the case may be, other options, I guess I'm
Right.
saying. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to think about it. One is, requesting more money doesn't necessarily impact directly what someone's going to be paying on their individual bill. So, a lot of it ties to how much does it cost to run a town. And so we notice the cost of living in general increases. So there has to be, to some degree, eventually you have to increase. Because like, for instance, like the salaries of our employees, like those go up 3% every year, like merit based. So if you're collecting the same amount of money, but you're mandated to increase salaries, then you can see that in order for you to operate, you'd have to operate off less money for other services. And so eventually it does make sense to increase. I think the best question is, in terms of like services, people want to feel like they're getting a good return on their investment. I don't necessarily think Maywood's property tax issue for the residents is so much the dollar amount as much as it is them feeling like they're getting a quality service for their dollars. So some people say, hey, if my streets are paved and it's quiet and I have a grocery store and, my kids can play safely at the park, sure, I don't mind paying $6,000-7,000, a year in property taxes, because people expect that in the suburbs. When you don't get that and you don't know where your money's going, or it feels like, you're not getting, the bang for your buck, I think that becomes the biggest issue. But in a lot of cases, economically, it does make sense for you to increase your levy, because increasing the levy would be like you getting a raise. Does it ever make sense for you to get a raise? Yeah, it does make sense, because my rent's going up, my mortgage is going up. How do you get that raise? Speaking from a local community, is you got to bring businesses. That's sales taxes. That's property taxes. When we talk about property taxes, there's a lot of vacant commercial property in the village.
Yeah.
That that's where we're supposed to get some of our major resources from. So that's where the focus should be. Because then, let's say in theory, if we put properties on those taxes, you're not going to ask for the same amount of money next year, because I know there's more people contributing. Because we put a car wash there, and we put a coffee shop, and we put a bar and grill, and we did that. So yeah, instead of asking for $10 million, let's ask for 11 million, because now we have more people contributing to the pot. So I think it's about understanding the formula, and the formula is have more people contribute to the pot, and then you can ask for more. If you don't have more people contributing to the pot, you shouldn't ask for more, but then it shouldn't cost too much more to run your town.
Has there been some type of conversation about bringing in more industry to the village of Maywood to fulfill those vacant lots, as far as zoning and companies that once were there no longer there?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked that question, because economics and government, there are connections, but it's completely different markets, right? And so our job as a village is to make our town attractive to the capital markets, right? Where someone would say, oh, if I go to this community, I'm going to be in the green. My business is going to be safe. I enjoy the community. All those things are moving parts. And so the village has a role in that. And, the government has a role in that. But the community in general has a role in that. That's where small businesses, we should be an incubator for small businesses. Like, people should be coming out of Maywood, going to college or learning a trade, and then coming back and building businesses. As far as like those major regional areas, that's where you have, that's where things like chambers of commerces come in. That's where credit unions come in. That's where, partnerships with community development and, developers come in. And that's why it's really important to have a strong reputation. That's why it's really good to have a good reputation as far as like permits and doing business, because that small community talks. And I think Maywood has to invest in our brand and has to really be able to tell the story that if you come here, not only can you be profitable, but your business can grow here. And I think we are seeing that, we are seeing that growth. There's of course more, like the community deserves a grocery store, right? But the economics of it's not about what we deserve. It's about
Right.
who
Right.
wants to come here.
Right.
Right. And I think that's a telltale sign, right? Because businesses, at the end of the day, it's about, green.
Yeah.
And so, it's about making sure does our brand appeal to people that want to come here? Because you might even ask, someone that's, looking for a place in Chicago, and you say,
Mhm.
where do you want to move to? You want to move to Maywood? Their response is probably the same response a girl, Jewel might have, or Mariano's.
Right. Right. Right.
Well, like depending on, like they're going to have those same considerations. So we have to just kind of keep that in mind and making sure that we're sharing positive stories about our town. Make sure we're
Absolutely.
sharing stories about how people are being profitable and making sure we're investing in that brand so people can look at our community as a place that they could be successful.
I'm glad. It reminds me of the marketing aspect: price, promotion, place. 3 or 4 P's of marketing. But you and I have a conversation about the micro level. Microeconomics, talking about the homes and levy and bonds, how it impacts the residents. We talk even on a more expansive micro level when we talk about businesses coming in, corporations, small businesses, being an incubator, attraction for outside stakeholders, external stakeholders to come into the village of Maywood, because strategically placed geographically, it is perfect. 10 miles from downtown, right off of, the Eisenhower Expressway, not too far from Stevenson. I mean, suburbs surrounding and everything like that. But I want to ask you that question in that same vein, Trustee, because I know a couple of comments were made. One from Mr. Sykes about the taxes being high, and Mr. Horn asking about the non-binding referendum, and of course, I talked about the pool or the aquatic center, the status of that. Is the budget, is the village of Maywood solvent? In other words, is it, you mentioned in the green from a county standpoint, is it in the black? Is it running at a deficit? Is there something that's preventing it from being, generating positive revenue? Or is the budget hemorrhaging, right, as of now? What's the status of the budget?
Yeah, so the village budget is strong in terms of cash flow. So there's two things going on. So in terms of cash flow, the village is able to pay its bills in a timely fashion. We collect enough where things are going well. Now there's also, in terms of a deficit. Now that doesn't mean that the village does have a significant deficit, which pretty much it's like making good money, but you have a mortgage and a credit card bill. The village does have a deficit that we've been, over the past few years, we have been working to reduce. So we've been doing well there. But I want to, if I could take a moment to maybe speak about, because I think where people are asking about park districts and this and that. So let me kind of address some of those things if you don't mind. So there are some, issues going on in terms of the park district. I can tell you now that we were planning on transitioning 6 of the village-owned parks to the Maywood Park District. That has since been tabled just for now. The plan is to install new park equipment into 6 of those parks, including Connor Heights Park, Waterworks Park, and a few others. And we're going to be looking to do that early summer. And then after that, after we've replaced this equipment, we'll be going back to the table to entertain those conversations. But I know there have been, discussions about their financial situation, and I believe that's been resolved. I believe they had an issue with late collection from the county, and so they had some bills go unpaid and some other stuff. So I believe that they're afloat now, although there was some issues. And so in response to that, the village has decided to take the lead on some park improvements. So more to come on that. And that does also include some updated basketball rims and backboards at the Doc Rivers family basketball court at Connor Heights Park. So look forward to that. But we're solvent. We do have, as I mentioned, and I want you all to pay attention to this, is that we are connected. The village of Maywood is connected to the casino revenue with Chicago, and so now we're seeing about $10,000 to $12,000 a month but that's just from the temporary space. Once that moves into its full space and has full occupancy, we're going to be seeing some significant resources for that. And I'm going to be encouraging the village to utilize those resources for improvements of the Fred Hampton Pool. And actually, we can start now this year with getting that done. So that could be under construction as soon as possible. And so, but that doesn't happen unless you have the community saying that. And so you got to utilize those phones, you got to utilize those emails, and you have to understand the game that you're playing, right? Mm-hmm. This is democracy. This is government. Mm-hmm. It's a participation sport, right? You don't get what you deserve. You get what you ask for. You get what you demand. You get what you fight for. You get what you can get majority votes for. So it can happen. It's coming from somebody on that board, but you have to get the buy-in from the other trustees, and you have to ask for commitments.
Well said. Now, you say everybody can participate, but the sports part, they aren't getting participation awards for participating. You have to do your due diligence. You have to do your job, attend the meetings, and contact your trustee. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? It's pretty simple. You mentioned return on investment, the ROI. You're investing, you're planning to invest. I hope that those of you who had comments or questions about the Park District, that you were able to receive receive an answer at all. So, and that's why we have this platform. So we have representatives like Trustee Jones coming on a fairly regular basis and not being afraid or hide in the background and waiting to the next board meeting to, politic or politicize this issue, which is a heavy issue, an ongoing issue. So again, that's why we're so thankful to have Trustee Jones come in and talk about this. Trustee Jones, I know that the other topic that we were going to discuss, that we have to some extent, was the new TIF districts.
Yes.
Is that something that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah. So the new TIF districts, the board voted in favor of, this was last year, we voted in favor of moving forward with those TIF districts in certain residential areas for the creation of them. How we plan on utilizing those, or if it'll actually go through, actually depends on the other governing bodies. They have to agree to it as well, because they're going to be impacted. And so that doesn't mean we will move forward with it, but we did want to entertain the possibility because it's a financing tool. But I did want to, explain a few things to the residents just so they understand. As I explained earlier, TIF districts, they capture the growth, the equalized assessed value growth of a certain area, and then you're able to utilize that growth for capital expenditures. Now, the issue is, and what we don't know is what that growth would be and what we would actually do with those with that money. So we owe you those answers because it's going to impact the other governing bodies and the resources that they're not going to get for us to do those things. So we owe you more answers, and you owe it to yourself to stay involved because it's an opportunity, but it needs to be planned out. It's one of those things where, I like to use the analogy of a credit card. Is a credit card good? Well, it depends on who has it. It depends on if they have a plan, if they have, again, a plan to, utilize it in a way which puts them in a better position. And so, what we don't want to do is, put our residents in a bad situation in the long term. So there's some more questions that need to be answered, but that's where we are now. Nothing is finalized. And so I would encourage residents to, stay involved, and, I can put my, my village cell out there. Actually I'll do it now, 708-288-8604. That is the Village of Maywood cell. You can call me and we can discuss these things, but, but we do need to have a plan. We need to have a budget. It needs to be realistic. I will say, some of our TIF districts in the past, like the Roosevelt Road TIF districts and the St. Charles TIF districts, we have been able to utilize those for growth. Sometimes we've gotten upwards of $3 or $4 million, in those TIF districts, which is great. But, infrastructure needs, an alley can cost $300,000. Washington Boulevard was probably $8 or $9 million. So, to put things in perspective, this isn't life-changing money. And so we have to know that, going into it, okay, so what could we do if we were able to raise an extra $2-3 million in increment, and is it worth it? Or because these are residential areas, and we also have to understand the market. A lot of the growth has happened already, over the past few years, and so we don't know what that incremental growth will be in the next 3-4 years. We don't know if we're going to have a recession, because TIFs only work if there's growth. Right. So that's the other thing to put in mind too. Like, just because you create a TIF doesn't mean it works. It's banking on there going to be equalized assessed value growth in these areas. Then you can capture it. If that growth doesn't happen, if we're in a recession, that TIF is as good as a credit card with a zero balance. Like, there's no growth. Right. So there's still work to be done, but ask questions, and my job is to make it clear for you.
And just like Mr. Horn said, Washington Boulevard between 21st and 9th Avenue looks great. Every time I come home, I go visit family, I see Washington Boulevard, I'm like, finally, but thank God.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And just so the audience is aware, again, Trustee Jones laid it out, but by definition, the tax increment financing is a value capture revenue tool that uses taxes on future gains in real estate values to pay for new infrastructure improvements. And he laid it out succinctly. And what I like about it, because you should be a professor, brother, you give real life application. And that's what a good teacher does. A good leader gives real life examples as it relates to difficult terminology, whether it's bonds or TIFs, return on investment, whatever, corporate tax, all that. Mm-hmm. We have smart villages. We have smart members, residents in the village of Maywood. But for those who may not be familiar with those governmental financial terms, that's what it's all about. So we covered that. The other thing I want to ask you about is the American Rescue Plan expenses.
Yes.
Would you mind touching on that, please?
Yes. So this has been a hot topic that I've been a champion on, and I've been fighting with the board with. So American Rescue Plan, what is that? So remember back during COVID, back in 2021, it passed, or maybe it was 2020, the American Rescue Plan passed, where it was resources in response to the COVID pandemic. And so we received those resources in response to a pandemic, and the village received it, and we've been working on assigning best resources for it. But remember, we received the money in response to COVID. And so we've been actually sitting on these resources for a while. We received about $3.1 million. And of that money, we wanted to use half of it for village equipment and infrastructure needs like alleys and streets and police cars, etc. And the other half we wanted to use for social related and small business needs within the community. So we wanted to partner with the Maywood Chamber of Commerce and, allow them to, network and build relationships with our regional businesses and our local businesses and create, almost like a Shark Tank type of a business competition where, we can have, businesses create business plans and we can help fund these ideas. We came up with ideas to support opportunities about tourism in our town. Maywood is rich history, in terms of history, has one of the more rich histories in Cook County. And we wanted to pour resources into investing in our history, namely in our historic landmarks, like the Masonic Temple and like the old, the Widow's Home. We also wanted to contribute to the Uptown Museum and Operation Uplift. That is really the mecca of our tourism. We want to, spend resources, a Ring doorbell program, because we want to get folks, our homes secured with camera footage, and it would be an opportunity for our law enforcement to engage with residents and build that rapport, a senior home improvement program, and et cetera. And so a lot of those ideas are literally trying to be moved forward now. And there's been some hostility, from the board because certain trustees want to pivot from some of those ideas and they want to do other things, which is fine. But I want our community to make sure that they understand that they have a voice and an opinion on this. And the village received that money really as we were charged with shepherding those resources to our small businesses, to our non-for-profits, that service our communities, to come up with communities because we're recovering from COVID. We're also supposed to utilize those resources for the village of Maywood, for equipment, infrastructure, et cetera. And so, those ideas are being pushed forward now. And I really want to encourage our residents to, stay engaged in those conversations and, call me. I'm the finance chair. I can get you all the information you need, or just, view the board meetings. But, we're talking about it now, and that money could be used for some great resources or as a great opportunity to recover from, a pandemic that we're still recovering from. The cost of things have went up. And so we want to be creative. But the other thing is that you want to invest in the stakeholders of your town, the people outside of the government that do the dirty work, if you will, right? That are taking care of the homeless, that are encouraging our youth, that are running those museums, things like that. The Fred Hampton pools, and that this is the time to invest in those things. And so we have an opportunity now. Like I said, we have $3.1 million, which is a significant amount of money, but it could be gone like that. But there's an opportunity. We need to have the community at the table and say, hey, here's what we want. And, utilizing the, understanding how government works. You got to get a majority support. So work with your trustees to say, hey, here's what I want, and I want your commitment, and see if you can get it done.
I would like to, just add, Trustee Jones, if I may, that the total stimulus package was $1.9 trillion that was proposed by the 117th Congress on January 14th, 2021, and signed by President Biden on March 11th, 2021. And the fact that the village was able to get $3.1 million of that is a good step in the right direction, if you ask me, combined with other efforts that are made. But here's the deal, because I grew up in Maywood, many years in Maywood, right. Still involved. If the people don't vote, you don't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a voice, those of you who are on social media or talking in the community who are complaining, you don't have a voice. It's like you're in the middle of a forest screaming, nobody hears you. Especially at the board level, leadership level. If you are unhappy or satisfied, attend the board meeting. Don't save it on social media. Get involved, get it active. We bring great people like Trustee Jones here to talk about the hard question, the hard issues, because this is the space and the platform that we create. But you must be part of that, because you are also an internal stakeholder for which Trustee Jones was just talking about. So if you don't vote and you're not one of the 15%, you should get your tail out there and vote. If you're not satisfied with the trustee that you want to do the work for you on behalf of you as a resident, vote him or her out, period. And bring someone in who can meet the agenda that you as a resident want. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. Right, Trustee Jones?
Hey, like I mentioned, government, democracy, and I use a sports analogy because, people are more familiar with it, but it's a participation sport. And I think once we realize how to play the game and how the game works, we could be successful in it. But the first step is realizing that, part of the game from the others is to convince you that it's rigged, to convince you that you participating doesn't do anything. That's the first part of the game that throws a lot of our community off. And because of a lot of things that they've gone through and a lot of things that they've seen, they're bought into that. And so we have to understand that, that's the first step, is that the people that participate are the ones that usually benefit from it. The next step is understanding, how it works. And so, civic engagement is something that, it doesn't happen by happenstance. It's something that you have to observe, or something that you have to, get involved. It's just about getting involved, understanding how it works. When it comes to policy, it's simple. You have a village council that votes on policy and on budget matters. And so a majority support, which is 4 out of 7 votes, and those things pass. And so if you want something, and if you can manage to get it on a board agenda through one of the trustees or the mayor, if you can get majority support, it can happen. And so it's really about doing your homework. Speak to a trustee. I would challenge the residents, if you've never called one of your trustees, or if there's a trustee that maybe you don't have a relationship with, just give them a call and say, hey, do you got 5 minutes and talk to them? And like if they don't answer, give them a call back in a couple of days. If not, pull up to a board meeting and say, hey, Trustee
Exactly.
Jones, hey, I tried to call you. Like, I don't know if you know who I am, but I'm so-and-so. I pay taxes here. I tried to call you to get an update on what's going on in my town, and you didn't return my phone call. I guarantee you that trustee's going to respond in a way in which, like, oh, hey, I didn't know, like they're going to, and that's how communities work that are, I guess you could say, are vibrant, is because they're engaged.
Resourceful, prosperous.
Because you have to remember, it's just like any other company. You're a stakeholder. You own a piece of. You have you have to do your you invest into a company, which is your property taxes. You own property. You now have voting power, right, through your representatives, through your vote. And so you have to utilize these at the ballot box and through your representatives. And you have a right because you contribute to the resources that we utilize to run this town. So you have a voice. You just have to utilize it and realize, it's similar to hiring a contractor. If you're building a new house, you just don't hire them and walk away. You got to follow up with them all the time, like, once a week. Like, hey, so what's the update? What's going on? You just don't leave folks to just do it and hope for the best, because there's going to be, some discrepancies.
We are a sports town. We are a sports town. If Donnie Boyce had 5 consecutive seasons of 10 wins, 11 wins, and finishing the bottom of the Western Suburban Gold Conference, you guys will hardtail him out of there quick, fast, in a hurry, even though he's a childhood hero. You guys know it just as well as I do. So hold the politicians' feet to the fire in the same way. Don't just expect a participation award. Participate in the meetings. Absolutely. And then do your report if you want to talk on social media. As Mr. Sykes said, do your homework. Right, Trustee Jones?
Do your homework. Hey, and don't take my word for it. Do your homework, right? Like I said, I think every resident, similar to working out, similar to like investing in yourself, going to going to actual work, spending time with your kids, civic engagement needs to be something that you're intentional about. Maybe it's 30 minutes or an hour a month. You're setting aside to make sure, okay, let me read an agenda. Like, let me see what's going on at the park district. Let me call somebody, like, because that's your job, is to be engaged. Like, the community needs to know if something's going left or right. There should be some people on the horn, like, oh, I know if this don't go well, Dr. Ratliff can be calling me the next day, like, hey man, I seen the board meeting. What was that about?
Yeah.
Hey man, like, that's not, I don't appreciate you doing that with my auntie's tax money.
Right.
I don't appreciate you doing that with my uncle's business tax money, or I don't appreciate you or whatever. Or hey, good job. I saw you advocating for this. That's and so right. we have to have that. We have to have that dialogue if we want to be effective, right. And our town is really a representative for how engaged we are. And we know by the talent that has come from our town, it's not because of lack of talent.
Oh yeah.
So we know it's not that. We know it's not a lack of location or poor location. So there's some other things, like there's some other things that we need to figure out. And I think that's the beautiful thing and the frustrating thing about Maywood is that when you look at the formula, you're like, man, we have all the intangibles. We have the formula for, something delicious. But when you take it, just, man, we're missing, like, what are we missing? And it's like, we're not far off, but that's a beautiful thing about communities. And, I'm bought in and I want to be a part of the solution.
Like I said before, and time again, asset-based community development, using the assets within to build out. And you put that out there succinctly, Trustee Jones. You went from the microeconomics, the microcosms, and everything as it relates to build it out. And when you do that, it'll come. If we're doing what we're supposed to do, then others will be attracted to it. Incubator, as you said. And so,
Absolutely. And one thing I will say about Maywood too, if you look at our surroundings, and this has been like this for a while. So some people might say, well, that's been the case for a while. But if you look at our surroundings, that's a good indication of the direction that we're headed in. And so when I think about our neighbors, the Merrill's Park, River Forest Park, Bellwood, Broadview, these communities are moving forward, and we should be benefiting from the economic. But you have to have strong leadership. You have to have people engaged, right? You just don't get that just by virtue of being in the right place at the right time. You got to have sound leadership, and you have to have people that are bought in. And you can't microwave that. You can't, social media post it to death. You can't, like, it's not an instant thing. It has to be something you have to build genuine relationships, and you have to empower people as well. It can't just be my show. I need to pour into people and trust them to, move the baton. That's where, we think about, the village. There's so many great coaches and leaders that have come from the town that weren't elected officials, that, move the community forward. And so it's about them as well, and them being bought in, and, we're going to figure it out. I'm super excited about it. I'm bought in. So I'm not going anywhere. Fortunately, I was reelected in 2023.
All right.
There is an election happening in Maywood of April in 2025. And although I won't be on the ballot, I'm not running for mayor. I
was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I'm not running for mayor. I'm not interested in running for mayor, but I will be involved because Maywood deserves good leadership. People that put the brand of the village over themselves. People that are actually fun to work with too. That are good partners. That matters in leadership. I talked about a team sport. I'll use a Michael Jordan analogy. Michael Jordan was an amazing player, but I can guarantee you he probably wasn't the best person to play with all the time, especially early in his career. Yes. He had to learn that it was a team sport, right? Like, you scoring 40 and, crossing the Celtics, that's cool, but we lost, right?
Yeah. Or the Pistons. The Pistons.
Hey, so, not only do we need strong players, but not only do we need, strong leaders, and somebody might be the star and that's fine, but those role players matter. Those coaches matter. I just saw that comment about he scored 69. Right. But I'm just using that analogy because Maywood doesn't necessarily need that all-star one person. We need someone that they're good, but they can actually see the talent that they have as teammates.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't necessarily mean trustees. That means other community leaders. That means regional leaders. Like, they're able to say, okay, I got to tap into all this, and then they need to shine. It can't just be about one or two people, because that means if they leave, the community, falls behind. And you don't want communities where if one person leaves and now, everything goes to crap. That means you didn't develop other leaders. It was just all about one person. So that has to be important. And I'm going to make sure that I do my part in figuring out who those leaders are and promoting them to the town.
Yeah, and Terry put it in the background. He said block clubs. Growing up at 15th and Maywood Drive, we had a really strong block club. The blocks next to us had strong block clubs because, it does take a village to raise a child, African proverb.
And I do want to say that's actually in our budget, in our clerk's office. We're going to be doing some block club initiatives. I know Trustee Brandon is huge on block clubs and initiatives, because what block clubs should be is really what community policing is. In a nutshell, it's about, we're managing our block. We're managing, the kids on our block, the cars that are parked there, the traffic. We are managing and we are policing our block. There's normally like a block club chair. We're going to throw events, we're going to have a good time, but it's about building relationships. It's about holding everybody on the block accountable to a certain standard where, a lot of things can be resolved and you don't need the police, right? Because we self-govern we govern ourselves. We have already agreed to, hey, here's how we operate on this block. Here's what's acceptable behavior. Here's what's not. Here's what you could do past 8 o'clock on this block. Here's where you should be parking. Here's where, and if we have an issue, and why that is also helpful too, block clubs, if you have, let's say 20, 30 people living on a block and all you all are sending the village manager or the mayor an email about a pothole, that's more likely to get taken care of than the one person that's doing it. And unfortunately, that's just how government is. And so that's how you can leverage block clubs as well, because how that gets translated is those 30 people translate that into votes. That one person, even though it shouldn't be that way, that's just how democracy works. And so there are power in numbers. Block clubs, kind of create little, kind of miniature communities where they are customizing those experiences for those blocks. And, that's what we need, that's really what we need. So we're investing resources. So that's something to get in tune with. That's going to be coming out of the clerk's office. Also reach out to Trustee Brandon. I know he's going to be, participating in that. And, we're going to make sure that our community,
Awesome.
Again, that has nothing to do with us. That's about pouring into you all so you all can do the work of building the community that you want to live in.
Well, I just want to say, because we are well past into the night with this conversation, and I love it. But I just want to say, as far as the block clubs, these were transformational transactions taking place. The block clubs, my police officer was Mr. Jackson. He wasn't a police officer, but he was the one that if you got out of line, bent out of shape, he would be right there to regulate. Or,
right.
Mrs. Robinson, Mrs. Taggett down the street, Mr. Taggett, Mr. Castile, who was a trustee back in the day. And
right.
we were the one that elevated Mr. Freelon to become the first Black mayor in the village of Maywood. But, our parents and grandparents and things like that, they were connected to the village of Maywood. Why? Because we had the block clubs, we had the pastors who were involved, the nonprofit organizations, POCCA and all that. You remember Mr. Jackson, Mr. Oh my God. That's a story. I used to swear sometimes, me being a minister, I used to swear sometimes. And all of a sudden somebody come and grab me and start whipping me. I was like, who is this? That's with me. It was Mr. Jackson. I'm like, I'm going to tell my dad and he's going to beat your butt. And when I go tell my dad, he's like, well, why did you swear in the first place? So I did it twice. I'm not advocating whippings, but I'm just saying that's what we did back in the day. And I think I turned out okay. And many that I went to school with turned out okay because of block clubs, people watching, to make sure that you did what you're supposed to do. Right. And that's how it is, the past performance portfolio, as I like to call it, because we have everything we need in the village of Maywood in terms of resources, Trustee Jones.
We do.
Everything we need.
We do. And you're right. And we're working toward that. We're in a different time and we have to acknowledge that. But, sometimes you got to, break it down to the simplistic, so it starts with the family and getting your house in order, right? Getting your house in order to me is about making sure that families have what they need. And a message that I want to send to the residents too, in terms of getting your house in order. Let's make sure we have this taken care of in 2024. Let's make sure that we have life insurance. Let's make sure we have homeowners insurance or renters insurance. Those things are really, really important. Once we have the home taken care of, that's when we can focus on add value to the block. That's where the block clubs come in, right? And if each block did that, Maywood is 21 blocks, right? There's literally more than 21, but we go from 1st to 21st Avenue. If every block took ownership of that, like, hey, let me make sure my house is in order, then let me contribute to my block. If everyone had that mindset, Maywood would be, then you don't need a super trustee or you don't need a super mayor, right? Because that's how you go. And then what would happen is that those different block clubs would connect and then they would raise up their future leaders. It'd be the youth coming from those blocks, and the block and the communities would communicate, and then they would prop up those next community leaders that would be the park district commissioners and so forth. So people don't have to be in these roles for 7, 8, 9, 10 terms. You would demand to say, hey, no, this person's been here. They grew up. They started at the block club and they did this and that's how they did it, or however they made it. But, that's how it's supposed to work, or that's how it could work. That's our history. And that's what we're going to work on. Start at
in the house,
micro levels. Mm-hmm. Start with 7.
Indeed. And like you said, it starts at home. You mentioned, investing. I mean, 529 plan for those who you aspire for your children to go to college, and working with them on entrepreneurship, not waiting until they reach a certain age, said, wow, I wish I would have started my own business, even if it's something small. just building from there. And, Trustee Jones, you provided a lot of invaluable information, young brother. And, I know you aspire to be great for the village, and for the village to aspire to reach that plateau where we can reach our fullest potential. And just before I let you go, the phone number to contact you again, can you repeat that, please?
Yes, it's area code 708-288-8604. So that is the Village of Maywood my Village of Maywood cell phone number. Call me or text me at any time. I will. 860404. So, call me or text me anytime. If I don't answer, I'll get back to you. But I'm interested in being an advocate for the town. That's what I was elected for. My talent is breaking complex things down. That's one of my talents. My other talent is about branding, and Maywood brand is powerful, but it needs to be marketed differently.
Yes.
And it needs to be presented differently. Yes. And so that's one of my other talents as well. And the last thing is building relationships and coalitions. I will leave with this. I am hosting me and Mayor Thompson are hosting a trip to Ghana in November. And so, reach out to me as well if you're interested in, if you're into traveling and so forth. But Village of Maywood, I'm happy to, represent my hometown. And if you need me, reach out to me.
Fantastic. Trustee Jones, thank you again for coming on our show again and sharing some nuggets with our residents. You see the number on the screen to contact Trustee Jones. I promise he will return your call within 24 hours because he's very engaged.
Yes, sir. 8604. I think that says 74.
Gary, 8674. Why you got 8604, not 74? 8604.
Yes. Yep. It's cool. We'll figure it out. We'll put it in the comments the right way.
Yeah. Okay. But again, Trustee Jones, thank you again for coming on our podcast. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of potential in the Village of Maywood. There are a lot of very intelligent, very professional residents in the Village of Maywood. That's why we call it the Village of Eternal Light. And so there's a light that's shining brighter and brighter by the day in the Village of Maywood. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, since Trustee Jones touched on it, our financial education class. We're getting that ramped up again. If you're interested in our financial education investment class, you can reach out to me at sratliff68@yahoo.com. That's sratliff68@yahoo.com. If you're interested in registering your child in our education class, or even if you want to become part of our adult class, please reach out to me, and I promise I will respond to you in a timely manner. That is it for us tonight. Thank you again, Trustee Jones, and thank you for your comments, residents. That is what all about. It's about community and moving the community forward in that vision, turning that vision into reality. I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff. Tune in next time when we bring in our next guest. Until then, on Let's Talk Maywood, be safe, continue to pray, be prosperous, and God bless you. Good night.